Speaker number 3, Dan Williams. I did it. I did it, Dan Williams.
January 1st, a time when a lot of us make New Year's resolutions. And one of the more popular ones is that this is the year I'm going to get in shape, lose those 20 pounds that somehow attached to me. And we go to the gym on January 2nd with thousands of others who made the same resolution. But about 3-4 weeks later, we make excuses why we can't go to the gym. And we justify why that donut won't hurt us. And before you know it, another resolution bites the dust. Why is it so hard for us to keep our goals and keep our resolutions? Mr. Toastmasters, fellow Toastmasters and guests, today I'm going to share with you 3 simple little ideas that I have found help me achieve goals. But before I do that, I would like to share a story about a person who made a very special goal and achieved it. In 2002, in the spring, my Boy Scout troop, which I was Scoutmaster, took a hike at the Skyline Ridge Open Space Preserve in San Mateo County, right here. The hike was going to be about 10 miles and had an elevation change of nearly 1,000 feet. We had 20 boys join us for that hike, and we had a new scout. A little guy, not very athletic, round face, but a wonderful smile, Brian. We started at the top of the ridge and went down and down and down. We had lunch at a beautiful lake at the bottom of the preserve and continued our walk along the bottom. At about mid-afternoon, we found a trail that was going to take us to the top of the ridge. It was a half a mile long, but it had a 700-foot elevation change. It was going to be a pretty tough climb. A lot of the boys had a lot of emotion and energy, and they zoomed up that hill. But I stayed back to make sure all the scouts were accounted for. But there was Brian there. His face was red, his arms were down, and he looked up that hill with dread. "Are you ready, Brian? We can go do this." "I think so, Mr. Williams." And we started climbing that hill. Well, we couldn't have got more than 10 feet. And Brian says, "Mr. Williams, I can't do this." "Brian, it's only a little way. You can do it." "No, it's too hard." And he flopped on the ground and started crying. What was I going to do? I couldn't leave him there. So I said, "Brian, I know it's hard, but you can do it. It's not that far." "No, it's too hard, Mr. Williams." I said, "I'll tell you what, Brian, here's what we're going to do. You see that rock over there about 15 paces from where we are? We're going to walk to that rock. You can rest, have some water, okay? And we walked to that rock. And after he rested a little bit, I said, "Brian, you see that tree over there with the shade about 20 paces in front of us?" He goes, We're going to walk to that and you could rest." And that's what we did. And that's how we went up the hill. And as we made every stop, I would go to Brian, "Brian, look at how far you've gone. We're going to be at the top of that hill in no time." Now, what should have taken us about 20 minutes took us over an hour. But when we reached the top of that hill, Brian didn't flop down on the ground like he normally did. He just kind of stood there, hands on his hips, looking down that hill. You know, he had a look of confidence in him. And he goes, "I did it, Mr. Williams." "You certainly did, Brian." And with Brian leading the way, we hiked back to the parking lot and met up with the other scouts. That summer at Boy Scout summer camp, Brian came up to me and says, "Mr. Williams, I want to be an Eagle Scout." I said, "That's great, Brian. You can do it." And for those of you who aren't familiar with scouting, the Eagle Scout badge is the highest award a scout can get, and less than 2% of the boys who enter scouting ever achieved it. When I have a goal, I know it's going to require some change. And change can be uncomfortable, and it's something we may want to avoid. But what I do is I tell myself how much better I'm going to be achieving that goal. And I see myself doing it. Then I take that big goal and I make it into a bunch of little goals. Goals that I can do, I can accomplish. And when I accomplish one of those little goals, I pat myself on the back. I tell myself, you're this much closer to achieving whatever it is I want. You know, when Brian looked up that hill, he thought it was going to be hard. He told himself he couldn't do it. He couldn't see himself reaching the top. But by telling him you can do it, and taking that big climb and making it into a bunch of little climbs, he made it to the top. And as we were going up to the top, I had Brian looking back at how far he went, not concentrating on how far he had to go. On June 23rd, 2007, I had the honor and the privilege of giving Brian his Eagle Badge Award. And now Brian was a tall young man, and now I looked up to him and shaking his hand. And he looked down at me and says, I did it, Mr. Williams. So when you have a goal, embrace the change. Embrace that challenge, because you will be better for it. Take the big goals, make them into small goals. Goals that you can accomplish. And every attempt, congratulate yourself, because you are getting closer to what you want. And one day, like Brian, you'll say, I did it. Mr. Toastmaster.